Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're going to be looking at a book that's over a century old, but still so relevant. It's called The Game of Life and How to Play It by Florence Scovel Shinn. And it's all about, approaching life, not as this chaotic mess, but as a game with spiritual rules, a game you can actually win. Think your thoughts can shape reality. Have you ever wished for something and then it just came true? We're going to dive into all of that and more today. And to help us explore this fascinating book, we have an expert in applying Shinn's philosophy for modern times. Welcome. So glad to have you here.
Thrilled to be here.
Okay, so Shinn's main idea is that life operates on this principle of giving and receiving. What you put out into the world, through your thoughts, words, and actions, comes back to you, kind of like karma. But she doesn't just tell you this. She illustrates it with the most captivating real-life stories. Have you ever read a book that felt like the author was right there with you, like sharing all these juicy secrets? That's what this book feels like.
Yeah, she's such an engaging writer, and that's what makes her work so powerful. She takes these abstract spiritual principles and makes them so relatable through these really fascinating stories.
Exactly, like the story about the woman who always pretended to be a widow as a child. She'd dress in black and play this sad role. And tragically, that image impressed upon her young mind ended up playing out in her adult life when her husband died young. It really makes you think, how much of our reality is shaped by those early unconscious beliefs we pick up?
That's a great question, and it really highlights the power of the subconscious mind. Shinn talks about what she calls the three departments of the mind: the subconscious, the conscious, and the superconscious. And you can think of it like this. The subconscious is like this powerful engine. It has immense potential, but it needs a skilled driver. And that's where your conscious mind comes in. It provides the direction and instructions. And the superconscious, that's your GPS, your divine guidance system, always pointing you toward the best route.
Okay. So how do we become better drivers of our subconscious minds?
By becoming aware of the thoughts and beliefs we're feeding it. Shinn is very clear about the power of the spoken word. She emphasizes that our words are not just idle chatter. They literally have the power to create our reality.
Like if you're always saying, I'm broke or I'm so unlucky,
Yeah.
you're actually programming your subconscious to attract those experiences.
Exactly. It's the law of attraction in action.
But if we shift our language
Yeah.
and start saying things like, I am abundant or I am fortunate, we can start to attract a different reality.
That's the idea. And Shinn provides a bunch of examples of how this works in real life. Like she talks about this woman who jokingly said, I wish I lived in a trunk.
And then...
Well, she ended up living in a state of poverty and limitation, metaphorically speaking, crammed into this tiny trunk of her own making.
Wow. Yeah, I'm going to be way more mindful of what I say from now on. No more joking about living in a cardboard box.
Cool.
But it's not just about positive thinking, right? There's more to it than just affirmations.
Right. It's also about aligning with the flow of the universe. Shinn calls this non-resistance, and this isn't about being passive or like a doormat. It's more about recognizing that forcing things can often create resistance, like swimming against the current instead of going with the flow.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. I admit sometimes I can be like a bull in a china shop. Yeah. So trying to force things to happen my way.
Yeah.
What are some ways we can practice non-resistance in our daily lives?
Well, we all do it, but Shinn reminds us that the most powerful forces in nature, like water, achieve their greatest effects through yielding. Think about it. Water can carve out canyons, wear down mountains, just by consistently flowing.
That's a powerful image. So it's about surrendering to the process, trusting that the universe has a plan, even when things don't seem to be going our way.
Yes, exactly. And she gives a great example of this. There was this woman who was trying to make a phone call, but she resisted answering an incoming call first. And you know what happened?
What happened?
She ended up with a disconnected phone line. Sometimes trying to control every little detail can actually backfire.
So it's about letting go.
Yeah.
And allowing things to unfold naturally.
Precisely.
So less white-knuckle control, more
Yes.
trust in the flow.
Exactly. And this principle applies to all areas of life, including love and relationships. In fact, Shinn dedicates a whole chapter to this topic, recognizing that love is key to winning the game of life.
And her stories about love are just as mind-blowing as her others. She talks about true love as selfless and fearless, a state of giving without demanding a return, like the story of the woman who had her heart broken. And instead of getting resentful, she chose to bless the man who left her, sending him love and forgiveness. And what happened next blew me away. Through this radical shift in her attitude, she actually ended up reconciling with the very man she thought she'd lost.
It's a great example of how our internal state creates our external reality. We attract what we are, not necessarily what we want.
So if we want to attract loving relationships,
Mm.
we need to cultivate love and forgiveness within ourselves first. That makes a lot of sense.
And this brings us to another key tool for playing the game of life, intuition. Shinn calls it our unerring guide, and she shares some pretty amazing anecdotes about how following those gut feelings, even when they seem to defy logic, can lead to incredible outcomes.
Like the story of the woman who was seeking financial abundance
Yeah.
and felt this random urge to give $100 to someone. It had nothing to do with her financial goals,
Right.
but she trusted that inner nudge. And guess what?
What?
That act of giving led to an even bigger financial windfall later on. It's like the universe works in mysterious ways sometimes.
It certainly does. And, Shinn reminds us that the reasoning mind can't always grasp the bigger picture. That's why it's so important to cultivate our intuition, that inner knowing that guides us towards our highest good. And speaking of finding your highest good, she also dives into the concept of what she calls the divine design. This idea that we each have a unique purpose, a perfect self-expression meant just for us. It's not about conforming to what society or other people expect of you. It's about uncovering and expressing your own unique gifts.
So it's about aligning with our true talents and passions and trusting that when we do, the universe will support us.
That's it.
That's incredibly empowering. I'm starting to see why people still turn to this book after all these years.
Absolutely. It offers this timeless message of hope and possibility, reminding us that we're not victims of circumstance, but conscious creators of our own reality.
But what about those times when things just don't seem to be working? No matter how much we affirm or visualize or make believe, what about those times when we feel stuck, like we're hitting a wall?
Well, that's where Shinn's concept of karma comes in. She explains that sometimes we create our own delays and obstacles by resisting the process or trying to control the how of our manifestations.
So it's about surrendering to the process, trusting that the universe knows the best way to deliver our desires, even if it takes a little longer than we'd like.
That's a big part of it. It can definitely be tough when you're impatient.
You have no idea.
Yeah, it definitely requires patience and trust, but Shinn reminds us over and over that the divine works in mysterious ways. We might think we know the best path, but often there's this grander plan unfolding that we can't even see.
I know it's true, but it does make you wonder what those times we did get our way look like from the universe's perspective, right?
It's fascinating to think about. And, surrendering to that higher plan can really change everything.
So how do we actually do that? How do we get out of our own way and let that higher plan unfold?
It really comes back to non-resistance, this idea of releasing the need to control the outcome, trusting that the universe is orchestrating things perfectly, even if it seems messy to us.
Okay, but that's easier said than done, right? Our minds are kind of wired for problem solving and planning.
Yeah.
So are you saying that sometimes the best course of action is actually to just step back and let go?
Exactly. Shinn gives this great example in the book about this woman who had been asking the universe for $2,000. And it arrived, but through this chain of seemingly unfortunate events. It involved a trip cancellation and lost luggage, and even a missed connection.
So like a total travel nightmare.
It was. But each of these events actually led her closer to receiving the money. So she ended up getting reimbursed for the trip and then received compensation for the lost luggage and even ended up getting upgraded on her flight because of the missed connection. And you know what?
What?
The total amount she received was $2,000.
Oh, wow. It really shows how what we perceive as obstacles can sometimes be pathways to what we want.
That's right. And it really emphasizes the importance of trusting our intuition because it can guide us in ways logic just can't. Shinn tells another story about a woman who was deciding between 3 job offers. 2 were in New York and 1 was in Palm Beach. She just couldn't make up her mind and felt totally stuck.
Oh, I hate when that happens. Analysis paralysis.
Yeah.
So did she end up just like flipping a coin?
Yeah, she didn't. She decided to turn to her intuition. She asked for a clear sign. And then one morning she woke up and she could smell the distinct scent of Palm Beach.
Oh, wow. Even though she wasn't there.
Even though she wasn't anywhere near it.
So a sign delivered straight to her sense of smell. That's wild.
It was so vivid,
Like
and she
that.
took it as a clear sign and accepted the job in Palm Beach. And
Yeah.
guess what?
What?
It turned out to be the perfect decision for her.
It's an amazing example
Yeah.
of trusting those intuitive nudges,
Yeah.
even when they come in really unexpected ways.
Right.
So if we want to master this game of life, it sounds like it's about finding that sweet spot between faith and action.
Mm.
intuition and logic.
I think that's a great way to put it. And Shin encourages us to ask for what she calls definite leads from the universe. Ask for specific guidance, and then be on the lookout for those signs, those little breadcrumbs that appear along the way. It's like we're co-creating with a higher power.
That's a pretty powerful way to view life.
Mm.
And honestly,
That's
it sounds a lot more fun than just passively hoping for the best.
right. It's about taking an active role. And Shin gives us a whole toolbox of techniques to help us do that. One of her most powerful teachings is this practice she calls casting the burden.
Casting the burden. What's that?
It's about consciously releasing our worries and fears and anxieties to a higher power. She uses this analogy of a boulder lifted high above the earth.
Okay.
Up there, it becomes weightless.
I like that. So casting the burden is like lifting our problems up out of the realm of gravity,
Yeah.
surrendering them to a higher power for resolution.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense.
And there's even a passage in the Bible that touches on this idea. Cast thy burden upon the Lord.
Oh, yeah.
It's about surrendering our struggles and trusting that a greater intelligence is at work.
So how do we actually do this? Is it as simple as just saying, like, universe, take this, it's yours now?
It can be that simple. But Shin also offers some specific affirmations to guide the process. She suggests repeating phrases like, I cast this burden, and then you name the specific burden, on the Christ within, and I go free to have, and then you name your desired outcome.
So we're not just like dumping our problems. We're actively declaring our desired outcome and putting our faith in a positive resolution. I like that. So can we use this for any problem?
Absolutely. From finances and relationships to health challenges or just feeling overwhelmed. It's a practice that can really help release the weight of those burdens and allow space for something better to flow in.
And it's something you could do anytime, anywhere, right? Doesn't require any special equipment or rituals.
It's really about cultivating that constant awareness of our connection to the divine, trusting that we're never really alone in our struggles. And Shin encourages us to repeat these affirmations over and over, like winding up a Victrola.
Yeah.
We're essentially rewiring our subconscious minds with these new beliefs.
So it's like we're replacing those old scratched records of fear and limitation with these brand new tracks of faith and abundance.
A perfect analogy. But she warns us that sometimes this process can lead to what she calls the darkness before the dawn.
Ooh, that sounds ominous. Does that mean things get worse before they get better?
Not necessarily. It's more about a purging of old beliefs and patterns. Sometimes when we start embracing these spiritual principles, it challenges our deep-seated subconscious programming. And it can feel like those old limiting beliefs are fighting for their survival, which can stir up some fear and resistance.
So it's not necessarily that things are getting worse, but more that we're becoming more aware of those hidden patterns that have been holding us back.
Exactly. And it's so important to stay strong during those times. Double down on your affirmations and hold fast to your faith, knowing that you're in the process of breaking free from those old limitations.
Like a mental tug-of-war with our subconscious minds.
Yeah.
We just have to never let go of that rope of faith.
Exactly. And Shin reminds us to celebrate what she calls the signs of land, those little glimmers of hope that appear along the way.
Right.
It's about recognizing and appreciating those small victories, because they're often breadcrumbs leading us to something bigger.
I love that.
She gives an example of a woman who had been affirming for a new set of dishes. And shortly after that, a friend gifted her a single cracked plate.
Oh, no. Not quite the elegant dining experience she was hoping for.
Right. She was pretty disappointed at first. And she thought, well, I asked for a whole set and all I got was this cracked plate. But Shin assured her that the plate was just a sign of land. It meant her dishes were coming. And she told her to look upon it as birds and seaweed.
Wow. So it's about trusting the process even when the signs aren't exactly what we expect.
Exactly. And you know what? It wasn't long before she received a full set of dishes.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So those seemingly insignificant signs can actually be powerful indicators of what's to come.
They often are.
It's all about perspective.
Yes.
This whole game of life thing. It's not really about manipulating the universe to get what we want, is it? It's more about a transformation of consciousness. It's about waking up to our true nature and our connection to something greater.
That's the heart of it. And Shin wants us to approach this journey with a sense of playfulness and curiosity, knowing that the universe is always conspiring to support our growth and evolution.
So it's about going with the flow, trusting that we're being guided towards our highest good. It's like we're learning to dance with the universe instead of wrestling with it.
What a beautiful way to put it. And that brings us to one of Shin's most interesting techniques, what she calls making believe. It's a really powerful tool for impressing the subconscious mind with new beliefs.
Okay, now you're talking my language. I've always been a big believer in the power of imagination.
Me too. And Shin reminds us that children are masters at this. They fully immerse themselves in their imaginary worlds, and those worlds often become their reality. And as the saying goes, unless you change and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven.
So we need to tap back into that childlike sense of wonder and belief, that ability to see beyond the limitations of the physical world.
Exactly. She tells the story of a woman who was living in poverty, but she refused to feel poor. She would spend what little money she had on beautiful hats or thoughtful gifts for others, and she would daydream about fancy things. But she did it without any envy. She chose to live in a mental world of abundance, despite her circumstances.
Wow, so her internal world was in direct contrast to her external reality. What happened to her?
Well, it wasn't long before she married a wealthy man, and all those rings and things she daydreamed about became her reality.
It's an amazing example of how our inner beliefs, even in the face of contradicting evidence, have the power to shape our lives.
They really do.
That's inspiring. It shows that our mindset matters more than our circumstances. What about those times when things just don't seem to be working? No matter how much we affirm or visualize or make believe, what about those times when we feel stuck or like we're hitting a wall?
That's a great question, and it's something Shin addresses directly. She points out that a lot of times we actually create our own delays and obstacles by resisting the process or by trying to micromanage how things manifest.
So it's about surrendering to the process, trusting that the universe knows the best way to deliver our desires. But how do we actually get out of our own way and let that higher plan unfold?
It comes back to non-resistance. It's about releasing that need to control the outcome and having faith that the universe has it all under control, even if we can't see the full picture.
It's so hard to let go of that need to control. Our minds love to solve problems and make plans. But are you saying sometimes the best approach is to just step back and surrender?
Exactly. Remember that woman who received the $2,000 through that series of what seemed like unfortunate events?
Yes.
Those events were actually clearing the path for her manifestation, even though they looked like roadblocks at the time.
Okay, that's making more sense now. The universe works in mysterious and sometimes frustratingly roundabout ways.
It does. And that's why it's so important to lean into our intuition. It can often guide us beyond the limitations of logic. Remember the woman who was trying to decide between those 3 job offers?
Oh.
She kept asking for guidance, but it just wasn't coming through clearly. And then one morning she woke up and she could smell Palm Beach.
Right. It was like a direct message from her intuition, delivered through her sense of smell.
Exactly.
I see.
So the key is to pay attention to those subtle nudges, those flashes of insight that often come when we least expect them.
And to be willing to act on them.
Yeah.
Even if our logical mind is protesting.
Exactly.
So it's about finding that delicate balance between faith and action,
Yeah.
intuition and logic.
Precisely. And Shin encourages us to demand definite leads from the universe. Ask for specific guidance, and then be on the lookout for the signs that show up. It's like we're actively partnering with the divine in shaping our reality.
This is starting to feel very empowering. It's like we're not just passengers on this journey, we're co-pilots.
You got it. And Shin gives us a whole arsenal of tools and techniques to help us master that. She reminds us, in divine mind, there is only completion. Therefore, my demonstration is completed. My perfect work, my perfect home, my perfect health. Whatever we desire, it already exists as a perfect idea in the mind of God. Our job is to align with that idea and allow it to manifest in our lives.
So if we could tap into that level of certainty, those things we desire are as good as ours.
That's the idea. And to help us align with that level of certainty, she suggests repeating affirmations like, I have a perfect work in a perfect way. I give a perfect service for perfect pay.
It's like a mantra for success in every area of life.
Exactly. And she goes on to say that perfect self-expression will never be labor, but of such absorbing interest that it will seem almost like play.
Wow. So when we align with our divine design, our work becomes an expression of joy.
Yeah.
Rather than a chore.
That's-
This is making me think about this whole game of life idea in a whole new way. It's not just about achieving external success. It's about a journey of inner transformation, a process of self-discovery and spiritual awakening.
Beautifully said. Shin encourages us to approach this whole journey with a sense of adventure and wonder, trusting that the universe is always conspiring for our highest good.
So it's not about forcing things to happen. It's about aligning with the flow of the divine, becoming conscious co-creators of our own reality.
Exactly.
Okay, but I have to ask, How does Shin address the idea that sometimes bad things happen to good people? I mean, if we're all creating our reality with our thoughts, words, and actions, then why do some people seem to suffer more than others? And what about events that are truly outside of our control, like natural disasters or accidents?
That's where Shin's concept of karma comes in. She explains that we're not just responsible for our actions in this lifetime, we also carry with us karmic patterns from previous lifetimes.
So we're talking about reincarnation here, this idea that we've lived many lives before this one, and that we'll continue to do so until we learn certain lessons and evolve spiritually.
Exactly. Shin suggests that those who seem to be suffering unjustly, might be working through karmic debts from past actions. It's not about punishment, though. It's about growth and evolution.
So it's about learning from those mistakes and balancing the scales and ultimately evolving towards a higher level of spiritual awareness.
That's the idea. It's like a process of spiritual maturation.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But how does Shin explain things like natural disasters or accidents? Those aren't always a direct result of someone's karma, right?
Yeah, that's true. And Shin acknowledges that there are larger forces at play that are outside of our individual control.
Right.
But she also suggests that even in those situations, our individual consciousness can influence how we experience them.
So our thoughts and beliefs don't necessarily cause those events, but they can shape how we respond to them.
Right. It's about finding that inner strength and resilience even when things are really tough.
And that's where cultivating faith and courage and non-resistance comes in.
Exactly. Shin reminds us that even in the midst of chaos and uncertainty, we can choose to align with the divine, trusting that a higher purpose is unfolding.
Makes me think of that verse from the Bible. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. It's about finding that deep trust in a higher power, even when things feel scary or out of control.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And Shin emphasizes that man's will should be used to back the universal will. It's about aligning our own desires with the divine plan, trusting that the universe has our back.
So it's about surrendering to a wisdom that's greater than our own limited understanding. And there's something very freeing about that surrender.
Absolutely. It lifts that burden of trying to control every little thing. We can relax into the flow of life, trusting that we're being guided towards our highest good.
This whole conversation has been a real eye-opener. It's making me realize that this game of life isn't really about winning or losing. It's more about this spiritual journey of awakening to our true nature and our connection to the divine.
That's the essence of Shin's message. She wants us to approach this journey with a sense of playfulness and curiosity, knowing that the universe is always on our side.
It's not about forcing things to happen. It's about aligning with the flow of the divine, becoming conscious co-creators of our reality.
Beautifully said.
Well, this deep dive into Florence Scovel Shinn's wisdom has been truly mind-expanding. It's a powerful reminder that we are not victims of circumstance, but conscious creators of our own reality.
And she gives us so many practical tools and techniques to help us navigate this game of life, turning our challenges into opportunities for growth and transforming our fears into these triumphs of faith.
So what does this all mean for you, dear listener? What area of your life could you approach as a game with these spiritual rules? What steps could you take today to play it more skillfully and joyfully? We encourage you to ponder these questions and see what insights emerge.
And remember, the tools for success are already within you. Cultivate your faith, embrace love, practice non-resistance, and listen to your intuition. These principles can help you navigate life with more grace, ease, and abundance.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the timeless wisdom of Florence Scovel Shinn. Until next time, may you play the game of life with mastery and grace.